Welcome. You've just entered the walls of wisdom, a space where we magnify the majestic nature of the HBCU and we share our transformational stories to inspire the community and the next generation of HBCU students. Joining us today is distinguished Morris Brown College graduate Eula Adams. Recognized as one of the 50 most powerful Black executives in America, Eula Adams is a former partner at Deloitte, former president and CEO of First Data Corporation, and former senior vice president of Sun Microsystems. Today, he is a member of the White House Historical Association Board. So let's fill these walls with wisdom and welcome to the show the transformational journey of Eula Adams.
I'm Eula Adams. I'm a 1972 graduate from Morris Brown College with a BS in accounting. I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida, and I want to talk about my earliest recollections because I think it's important. My mother and dad didn't finish high school. They divorced when I was about 4 years old, and no one in my family attended college. They didn't graduate from high school, and there were always concerns about a lot of things that young couples had. So once they divorced and separated, we moved to Jacksonville. Uh, I attended a high school in Jacksonville that is really a rather famous high school, and most of you won't know about it, but it was called Stanton High School, and it was the first official high school for African Americans in the state of Florida. James Weldon Johnson was the principal and wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing while he was at Stanton for Booker T. Washington's visit. In spite of this history, I was a C student. And so academically, I wasn't well prepared. I didn't have a college in my future until I received an athletic scholarship to Morris Brown College, thanks to my football coach at the time, Coach James Small. Uh, they, he saw something, I guess. And so that led me to Morris Brown College. And I, I would say my whole journey, when I was growing up, we moved a lot. We moved around Jacksonville, and I went to multiple schools, high schools, elementary schools, and we mostly spent most of our time playing in the playgrounds, football and basketball, and just trying to stay out of trouble. I had a few different jobs along the way because my mother, as a single parent, worked as a domestic servant in people's homes. And so we were poor by most standards back in those days. And we didn't have or shall we say, I didn't take a lot of time to get into the classrooms and the books because honestly, at that point in my life, I didn't really couldn't see much of a real future for myself. And so education wasn't a real high priority. Now, you might say, well, what were the factors that influenced me to, get to higher education and get to ultimately to Morris Brown College? Well, back in 1972, of course, the Vietnam War was going on, and we had the draft lottery system. And so I had a very low draft lottery number, and my number was a number that had I not gone off to college, then I probably would have been drafted into the military and sent off to Vietnam. And so I was really not very keen about wanting to go to Vietnam because at the time we were seeing a lot of young people, a lot of people that we all knew coming back from Vietnam in boxes. And so I was on the football field. Coach Small saw something, and he worked really hard to get me a scholarship to, at the time, Morris Brown College. And I had no other options from an academic standpoint other than Morris Brown. So it just turned out that that was the only place, and it was a place to go to not have to go to Vietnam. Uh, when I arrived at Morris Brown in the first year, I would say the best thing that happened for me was that football scholarship because because of football, I was required to maintain a minimum grade point average in order to keep my scholarship. And so the discipline of having a nightly curfew, and then I had really great role models in my roommates, uh, and it was also look the fear of failing and the fear of getting drafted, kept my focus on the classroom work. And lo and behold, I started having some really positive results in the classroom. I started getting good grades, and and that really inspired me to work a little bit harder at the academics. Morris Brown was a wonderful place for me at the time that I was there, and there were so many traditions and so many things that I look back on really 53 years back in terms of some of the great campus traditions and things that we had at the time. And so as I think about it, I think about we had a football team which I was a part of, and just to be very honest with you, our football team was okay. We weren't great. We played schools like Fisk and like Tennessee State, and Tennessee State would take care of us. We usually could handle Fisk, just to be candid with you. And we played the Atlanta University Center Schools, Clark and Morehouse, and those. But the real thing we had a great band. The band at Morris Brown was really terrific. And for those of you who may not have had the luxury, the opportunity to go to a small HBCU like Morris Brown, you know, it was a great environment. It was a great experience in terms of, building relationships, building friendships. And many of those friendships have lasted me throughout my adult life. I will say the parties were really good too. The Greek organizations, I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, so really the Greek organizations made a world of difference. And at Morris Brown, if you've been there and visited, you know about the bridge. And we had this, and it still exists today, this bridge over what was at the time called Hunter Street. Now it's called Martin Luther King. But the bridge was where we did a lot of things. And it wasn't unusual to see people on the bridge dancing or doing something crazy on the bridge with traffic coming through below was a tradition. Fountain Hall, which was one of the top academic buildings that I spent so much of my time in, was also a place where we spent a lot of time hanging out. The Student Union building, those were just places that if you were on the campus, those were places that even to this day, you think about them and you remember. And then there were the educators. There were the teachers. There was the Oscar Burnett's of the world, the Willie Richardson, the Mrs. Hollowell. So many people that shape your thinking about a lot of aspects of your life from a very early point. Having nothing to draw upon when I went off to college, I had no idea about what to expect. The freedom that I all of a sudden found myself with, freedom about even with the football curfew. There were lots of things once football season was over that you had to learn about or make decisions on. So the freedom was one thing that really surprised me about college life. And then there were the importance of the decisions that you have to make. Uh, I have to say, making good decisions in college when you're pressed to do it. And I would say, in my case, that was really critical because, as I said, I didn't have a lot of role models in my family life that would help you to be prepared for what you might encounter in college. So making good decisions were really surprised with the freedom and having to learn about the importance of making good decisions. Um, how did my life change during my 4 years at at Morris Brown, and how I evolved over time. Because in my case, it was an evolution. As I mentioned, I was I was not a great student in high school. I mean, those C's, and sometimes I even show my son, who's an educator, my high school cards about what my grades look like, and there were lots of C's and maybe even a D or two on it. But when I got to Morris Brown and I started having positive results in the classroom, again that discipline from the athletics, uh, I became I came in as an athlete, but I left as a recognized student scholar. That evolution was a result of, I have to be honest, the educators at Morris Brown, like Oscar Burnett and Willie Richardson. It was a result of the student body, particularly my future and current spouse of 52 years. They all had a great influence on me. The encouragement and the feedback made all the difference in the world. My roommates, Wesley Smith, who's was deceased at a very young age, Quentin Williams, and Leonard Small, and all my Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity brothers, they were always there supporting and encouraging me. So over time, if you start getting enough good positive feedback, over time, I became the student that I had always had the potential to be. I just didn't have the encouragement and the support earlier in life until I got to Morris Brown. I think sometimes that had I been at a really big, predominantly white institution, I might have easily gotten lost. Uh, the people around me saw something and they never gave up on me. And in time, I started seeing what they saw and wouldn't give up on myself either. I made some career choices as I graduated from Morris Brown, and I graduated with honors, uh, and I chose early while I was at Morris Brown the accounting curriculum, and I chose accounting because I had a knack for solving problems in the classroom. Willie Richardson had a tax and bookkeeping practice, and he employed me to work for him. So I also learned that there were few, and this was really something that was really important. There were very few African American certified public accountants in the country, and there were none within the large accounting firms. There were no African Americans who were partners in large accounting firms. I wanted to change that. So I chose to go to work for Touche Ross, which was one of the largest accounting firms in the country, as their first African American in Atlanta. And 9 years later, I was the first African American partner. This was a tremendous accomplishment because there were so few people of color who reached the partnership level. And just to put it in perspective for you, at the time I became a partner at Touche Ross, we had 800 partners, and I was the only African American. Um, you know, when you think about dreams and the things that you dream about, uh, and how they manifest themselves because of your education. When I came to Morris Brown, as I mentioned earlier, I had no idea of how far I could go in terms of my career aspiration. Sometimes, if you spend time around people of quality and they have vision and they have goals and objectives, before you know it, you start assuming and expecting that you should have goals and objectives too. So as I spent my time at Morris Brown, I started envisioning myself as having a career, having a big future, a future in the business world. And so becoming a partner in a big eight accounting firm became a dream of mine. Getting a Harvard MBA became a dream of mine because of the fact that it was a dream of Janet's, my wife. And this is no joke. While we were at Morris Brown, Janet came up to me. We were dating, of course, and she said to me that she had had a dream that I went to Harvard and I got my MBA. So all of a sudden, it became a goal of mine to get that Harvard MBA. And, I also had dreams of travel and seeing the world. And through my professional career, I've had a chance to do that. I've always wanted recognition. And in 1999, I was honored to be named by Fortune magazine as one of the 50 most influential African American executives in the United States. So, in so many ways, I far exceeded any expectations I could have had when I arrived at Morris Brown College in 1968. It's been a really terrific experience on my part, and might not have been possible had I not been at Morris Brown College. Now, it's certainly true that God drives us in so many different ways, and maybe my path could have been as successful in some other institution, but I don't. I choose not to think that way. I believe that an education in an historically Black college and university like Morris Brown, for me, not for everyone, but for me, was the choice that God knew and put me into so that I would be surrounded by the right role models, the right educators, maybe that I would meet Janet, all the things in your life that sometimes need to come together to enable you to have a success. So that's the way I see my Morris Brown. Now, I've had a really wonderful career path to this point. I've always been concerned as I've gotten older about the future of our country and losing some of the hard fought civil rights that we've gained as African Americans. When I think about my career path and I think about Morris Brown, and I was fortunate enough to give a talk on this a couple of weeks ago at Big Bethel. You know, so many people over the years have fought hard to give us and put us in the position as African Americans. And the chief and primary of these were our voting rights, the participation in our political process, the gains in the private sector in employment, the movement and upward mobility in executive branch and the boardrooms. I fear not very few of those might not have happened had it not been for our voting rights. So they're under attack today on so many fronts. So personally, I support political candidates at all levels, local, state, and federal. I volunteer. Today, I'm a member of the Colorado Democratic Committee for the state. I sit on the boards of a transportation authority for the state of Colorado. I'm on the White House Historical Association. So I try and give back and pay back. I recently went under the board of the Colorado Mental Health Network because in my family, I've had family members who suffered from drug addiction and other issues that inhibit or prevent or limit their ability to have the same kind of success that I've had. And so I've tried and give back in that way. And then I've been blessed to sit on a number of corporate boards. And I'm also active with Kappa Alpha Psi, the alumni, and I'm on the Sigma Pi Phi Boule organization. And both these organizations serve as role models for young men and provide scholarships. So those are some things that I always encourage people to do, and I try to do myself, which is, you know, try and do for others what people did for me, even though I didn't realize they were doing it, which is to give back, to be available, to care about other people. I think about Morris Brown as being sacred to me in almost a spiritual sense, in that when we talk about Morris Brown, we always have a phrase that we talk about called Morris Brown as a haven for hungry souls. And so when I think back on the 140 years of the school's existence, I can truthfully say that, when you think about it, started with the post slavery period. Morris Brown was founded by the Big Bethel Church in 1885, really in 81, but didn't start taking students until 85. Uh, and the one thing that was always okay is that they were willing to start with people like myself, people who didn't have maybe the best family situation that supported them going to college. Uh, they viewed themselves as a place for those people who might not have other places to go. And so it was always sacred to me from that standpoint. People who came to Morris Brown without a clarity about their future. But at Morris Brown, they found people like themselves, people who were supportive in the administration and the student body. There is no explanation to me other than God's presence, and that to me is sacred. I think that I shared my story about the difficulty I had in getting through high school and not having the kind of guidance and direction. The terrific thing about HBCUs in so many ways is that there are people like yourself. And so there are people who've had difficulty learning. And what I always say to young people is keep searching. Search for what you're passionate about, keep trying to deliver. We have to deliver on the current requirements. I found very few things that I was taught in college were of no value to me later on in life. So everything has some value. So I cannot and truthfully say to someone, don't care and don't worry about the things, the curriculum and the other things. So you have to keep trying. But you have to keep searching for that other thing that will be easy for you. In my case, somehow I found my way to the accounting. I found my way to Willie Richardson's accounting practice. So I think you have to keep looking. You have to be open to things. And when you're young, it's okay to try different things because that's how you learn what might be the right thing for you. Try different things, see what fits, what works, and hopefully you'll find your thing early, and you'll know it when you see it and you find it. I was blessed to have roommates, Wesley Smith, Quentin Williams, and Leonard Small, and they were my football playing buddies. But every night, on a nightly basis, they shared experiences. They challenged my thinking. They helped with my daily classroom preparation. They helped me change and shape how I thought about things. Wesley Smith, I say, Wesley was the wise old soul spiritually. He would quote the Bible and had a strong spiritual base. Quentin was the quiet one, but when he had something to say, it was powerful. And Leonard Small, he was the lively one, with great personality. I learned and grew from each of them daily. And it was like every day as I now look back on it, they helped to change me and shape how I started to think about things. And it just goes to show you just don't know where and who you're going to get those inspirational, wow, kind of amazing moments from. And there were so many things that Wesley, Quentin, and Leonard shared with me and gave to me that I carry with me today. And the last one, and I can't end without sharing this one. The last but not least is what I said about Janet Cannon Adams, my wife of 52 years. I met her at Morris Brown College. She, more than anyone, has wowed me almost daily. She had the dream about Harvard and has been behind the scenes offering advice, having words of wisdom and encouragement, spiritually, tactically, operationally. She's probably the best CEO I ever had the chance to work for. So she's helped me in so many ways. And I guess I can't help but say and leave this with people: having a partnership with someone that can be an intimate relationship can certainly help carry you throughout your life. Because one of the things we find is that when we're working in the business world, the religious world, the corporate, the government world, whatever world we're in, is it's helpful to have someone we can bounce things off, that we can trust, and that we know that the feedback and advice we're getting has our best interest in mind. So that's one of the wow. The second wow thing for me is having Janet Cannon Adams in my corner for 52 years. While I got most of the accolades and was out front, but it certainly wouldn't have been possible without her kind of nudging me along the way behind.